Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today we are strapping in to tackle a topic that usually guarantees screaming matches, blurry footage, and just, a lot of bad faith arguments. Unidentified flying objects, UAPs.
It's a topic where the volume often far, far exceeds the signal.
Exactly. And for most people, the word UFOs, it instantly conjures up images of Roswell, little gray men, all that sensationalism. But we are not doing that today.
No.
We're taking all that noise out and replacing it with pure, unadulterated, almost painfully sober scientific methodology. We're looking at this data like forensic accountants, not like ufologists.
Precisely. We are diving into the challenging and, I think, really important work of scientific analyst Justin Lake, specifically his paper, UFO Definition by Knowledge.
Right.
And this paper is a masterclass in intellectual discipline. It's designed specifically to strip away all the cultural hysteria surrounding UAPs and force the analyst to determine, with rigor, what is actually anomalous versus what is just, secret or misinterpreted.
So the mission for us and for you, the listener, is to really understand Lake's core mechanism. He calls it constraint-preserving analysis. We need to figure out what Lake is saying in this paper and break it down carefully. You've brought us a genuinely fascinating text because it's just so contrary to how this topic is usually handled. In the media, the first instinct is either to embrace the spectacular or just immediately ridicule the witness.
It is the intellectual equivalent of a cold shower for everyone involved, believers and skeptics alike. Lake's work demands that we extract the most important insights by applying a ruthless scientific methodology, focusing only on the data points we cannot explain after eliminating every single conceivable terrestrial possibility. The result, and this is the whole goal, is a clean remainder set, a truly honest list of unknowns that are actually worthy of study.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with that central and I'd say radical premise of his work, the one he describes as deeply unsexy.
Right.
It's the rule that drives everything, constraint preservation.
And that's the key term, inconveniently disciplined. Lake's central premise is that if we're going to truly debunk UFOs, or maybe more accurately understand them, we have to explain the situations without ever accusing the witness of misrepresentation, faulty memory, or some kind of psychological delusion.
Okay, but that sounds impossibly strict, though. Isn't refusing to question the witness at all also a type of bias? I mean, why does Lake insist on such rigidity?
Because the entire exercise is a test of physics, not psychology.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a forensic scientist looking at a footprint in the mud.
Okay.
You don't immediately decide the victim was lying about where they walked. You measure the footprint, you accept the data, the depth, the shape, the size, and then you try to figure out what object or what weight distribution could have created that print.
I see.
Lake applies the exact same discipline to UAP data. You must accept the report as data that imposes physical constraints on the world.
So if a trained observer, let's say a military pilot, reports under oath that a craft was silent, Lake insists we have to accept that constraint as an absolute fact. We don't get to lean back and say, oh, well, they must have been too far away to hear the engine, or the wind was blowing the wrong way.
Precisely. If the witness says the craft was silent, you accept it as a physical constraint on the problem. If they report instant acceleration, you catalog that data point. No visible heat plume, that's another constraint, preserved.
Right.
Lake states it directly and very forcefully. You do not actually your way out of the data set.
That shifts the burden entirely. It makes the analyst's job incredibly difficult because instead of analyzing the human, you are left analyzing the seemingly impossible physical event.
It does.
Why is maintaining that data integrity, that commitment to never questioning the witness's observation, only their interpretation, why is that so philosophically crucial to his methodology?
Because, as Lake notes, the moment you accuse people of misrepresentation, you poison the well and learn nothing. You stop seeking a physical explanation for an observed event, and you start engaging in psychological or sociological analysis, which just derails the entire scientific mission. His goal is not to prove people are lying or mistaken. His goal is to figure out what known, or maybe unknown, physics can produce the reported effects. If you toss out the effects because they sound crazy, you failed before you even started. You have to learn from the constraints, not dismiss them.
So the key isn't that the constraints are true in the sense of aliens are real, but that the constraints are the necessary starting parameters for a real scientific inquiry into what could have generated that perception.
Absolutely. The rigor of the analysis is what validates the conclusion. The analysis must assume the witness is accurate about what they experienced. This way, if you fail to find a terrestrial explanation, The remaining anomaly is robustly defended. It earned its place.
Okay, let's look at the core constraints Lake insists we have to freeze and catalog. These are the observed behaviors that truly, truly challenge our current understanding of what can fly in our atmosphere, regardless of who built it.
He provides a very specific list, and it's a list that repeatedly appears in credible reports, particularly those involving military assets or, multiple sensor readings. And these have to be treated as facts during the analysis phase.
Okay.
It's the combination of these constraints that generates the anomaly.
So walk us through the major ones.
Okay, first, silent operation. No combustion noise, no rotor noise, no obvious engine sound, just silence.
Right?
Second, no visible propulsion or heat plume. No jet trail, no visible exhaust, no indication of a high-temperature energy source.
Okay.
Third, extreme acceleration and sudden disappearance. And we're not just talking fast, but instantaneous vector changes that would destroy any known human-made craft and the pilot inside it.
The G-forces would be impossible.
Impossible. Fourth, and this is a big one, absence of a sonic boom. If it's accelerating instantaneously through the sound barrier, where is the resulting shockwave?
Yeah, where is it? And fifth.
Fifth, variable radar visibility. The object sometimes shows up clearly on multiple sensors, sometimes not at all. Sometimes it appears to ghost through the environment.
The combination of extreme acceleration and absence of a sonic boom is the one that immediately puts the most pressure on known physics. If something goes from 0 to thousands of miles an hour instantly but doesn't cause a shockwave, you have a serious, serious problem to solve.
That is the definition of an anomaly. Right. And Lake forces us to confront that reality without the comfort of just, immediate debunking. We have to move from asking, did they really see that, to how physically can that happen without breaking every known law of momentum conservation, aerodynamics, and thermodynamics simultaneously.
Wow.
If a phenomenon meets all those constraints at the same time, it has earned the right to be called anomalous. It has survived the gauntlet.
This disciplined approach then leads into the workflow, which, as you said, Lake describes as stripped of drama. A clean, non-dramatic, four-step process for organizing the data. Let's break down those first two key steps.
The process is beautifully simple. It focuses only on the input data. So step one, freeze the claims. You catalog everything, the silence, the speed, the heat, without ridicule or psychological autopsy.
Just the facts.
Just the raw sensory and instrument data. You don't interpret, you just record. Then, step two is the analytical engine. Ask the single question, and the question is precise and highly constrained.
Which is?
What terrestrial mechanisms could, even in principle, produce this?
So it's a focused search for physical possibility. The analyst isn't trying to guess if it was a U.S. spy drone or a Chinese satellite.
No.
You're asking if the physical performance described is possible given what we know about physics and engineering. You're asking, is the event possible, even if we haven't built it yet?
Exactly. And this is a crucial distinction Lake makes. The question is not about likelihood. Are they likely to be here? Nor is it about observation. Have we seen them implemented in a black budget program?
Yeah.
It is purely about physical possibility under known or, extended physics.
Can you elaborate on that difference, the possibility versus likelihood? That seems key.
Of course. Likelihood involves statistics, geopolitics, budget tracking, all very messy things. Possibility is clean. It's a physics question. For example, if we know that certain fields of physics, say, manipulating plasma to manage airflow, what's called plasma flow control, could, in theory, eliminate a sonic boom and reduce drag, then that event remains terrestrial in the Category 2 or 3 domain. It remains a possibility even if we've never seen the specific craft using it.
I see.
If, however, the report requires instantaneous acceleration at 5,000 Gs without reaction mass, and we have no theoretical basis for that in known or even reasonably extended physics, then we cross the threshold. We're in true anomaly territory, Category 4.
The goal, then, is not to deliver some dramatic conclusion, but to build useful categories that define the nature of the mystery. Lake argues this rigorous process should result in a breakdown of categories, which tells us where the true unknowns actually lie.
This is where the framework truly delivers. Lake outlines 4 specific categories that any observed phenomenon must fall into, and this structure is the real goal of the analysis. It's a nested classification system.
Okay, so let's detail those categories, maybe with a hypothetical for each to really show the listener how this analysis works in practice.
Certainly. The first is the simplest, and it's the fastest way to close a file. Category 1. Known tech plausibly explains this. This means the constraints fail the first physics test because existing public knowledge can fully cover the observation.
So, if a report says, I saw a bright light moving slowly across the sky, and Lake's analysis finds that a conventional high altitude balloon, which we know is flying in that area, matches the speed, altitude, and visual size, the case closes right there.
Exactly. Even when respecting the witness's honesty, the object they saw was simply a known terrestrial object that was misidentified. Most sightings, Lake notes, die here. Even under constraint preservation, the physical constraints just aren't demanding enough to challenge current engineering.
Okay, so category 2 is where the analysis gets murky but also more realistic. Category 2, known physics, unknown engineering. This is the one that really fuels the whole secrecy debate.
This is the domain of classified technology. The phenomenon adheres to known physical laws, thermodynamics, aerodynamics, but the implementation details are hidden from the public and often from lower clearance military personnel.
The physics are sound, but the engineering is secret.
Precisely.
A hypothetical here might be a sighting where the craft is silent and demonstrates incredible maneuverability, but the analysis confirms that technologies like, say, electric ducted fans and thrust vectoring are physically capable of that performance, even though we've never seen that specific advanced drone model because it's classified.
That's a perfect example. If it is technologically human, Lake suggests it belongs here. The constraints are preserved, it was silent, it was highly maneuverable, but the mystery is engineering secrecy, not a fundamental scientific breakthrough.
Then we step into the genuinely challenging territory, which is category 3.
Category 3, speculative physics. No known engineering. This is theoretical, but importantly, it's not yet forbidden by physics. We're talking about concepts that are right on the theoretical edge, like manipulating space-time curvature or certain exotic field propulsion concepts that might exist on a whiteboard at a university,
Right.
but have zero current, proven, deployable engineering capability.
So the constraints are so extreme that they might demand a mechanism we haven't mastered yet, but the mechanism itself doesn't actively break the established physical laws of the universe.
Correct.
It's plausible future science, but not a proven platform, terrestrial or otherwise.
Correct. It forces us to stretch our physical models to their breaking point, but we haven't crossed the line into the truly impossible. Not yet.
And finally, the smallest, hardest earned category. Category 4, flatly unexplained, the clean remainder set.
This is the set of anomalies that violate the foundational pillars of physics all at the same time. They meet that full list of constraints, accelerating at thousands of Gs without reaction mass, without heat, without a sonic boom, and without destroying their own structure. If an observation survives every charitable terrestrial explanation, every layer of classified engineering, and every stretch of speculative but known physics, it lands here.
And Lake's core tenet is crucial here. When you get to category 4, you stop.
You stop.
No aliens, no smug smiles, just a residue set that confirms we do not have adequate models for this. Physics is incomplete.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because category 4, that residue set, it demands what Lake calls epistemic humility.
The list of cases that survive every single elimination round. You touched on this, but let's delve into what Lake says this residue is and maybe more importantly, what it is not.
What is not, and this is fundamental, is an automatic proof of extraterrestrials. That is the leap of faith Lake is trying to prevent. That leap is the opposite of humility.
Right.
What it is a list of observed phenomena for which we do not currently have adequate models. It's an intellectual admission of ignorance, but one that's backed by the rigor of having eliminated everything else.
That phrase, epistemic humility, is pretty profound in this context. It means acknowledging the limits of what we know. Why do you suggest this approach terrifies both institutions and what you call the comfort crowd, the people who want simple answers?
Well, it terrifies centralized institutions because it means they lose control of the narrative. Lake argues that once constraints are respected, the institutional comfort zone is lost. You can no longer close a file with a simple bureaucratic misidentification or weather balloon if the observed behavior violates aerodynamics, thermodynamics, and signal propagation all at once. If you respect the data, you must respect the fact that the phenomenon exists and is currently unexplainable by the official public story. And that loss of control over the narrative is terrifying.
It also terrifies the comfort crowd on the other side, though, right? The ones who instantly jump to aliens because Lake's method is extremely brutal to genuine believers.
It is extremely brutal because when you subject most sightings, even the seemingly impressive ones, to the physics step, they fail quickly. You ask, can a strange reflection of light combined with a lack of sound explain this? The answer is often yes.
And it lands in category 1 or 2.
It lands in category 1 or 2, and the sensational component just disappears. Most sightings are indeed just misidentification or bad sensors or human error that can be explained without cheating the constraints. Only the tiny fraction of survivors become anomalies, and those are the ones that actually force scientific models to evolve.
So the goal is to elevate the quality of the unknown, not just increase the quantity of the unknown.
Precisely. We need fewer UFO reports and more qualified anomalies. And to achieve that, Lake actually redefines the very term UFO to move past the ambiguity of unidentified flying object and make it a simple boundary condition.
What's his working definition?
His personal definition is quite simple and, as he likes to say, boring. I encountered something that exceeded my personal technical vocabulary.
That's it.
That's all it means. It's an observer relative unknown.
I find that incredibly clarifying. The implication being that the definition of a UFO is relative to who is observing it and what they know about advanced engineering.
Absolutely. An advanced observer reduces the UFO count because they have a broader technical vocabulary. They might recognize the classified drone or the exotic but terrestrial propulsion method.
Whereas a primitive observer, someone with less exposure to advanced tech, inflates the UFO count because their technical vocabulary is limited.
Exactly. Let's put that into a concrete scenario. A top-tier classified physicist looking at a sensor reading might immediately recognize plasma flow manipulation that eliminates a shockwave.
Okay.
To them, the object is Category 2 known physics, unknown engineering.
Yeah.
But a highly trained yet uncleared fighter pilot might look at the same object, see the instant G-force maneuvers without a boom, and categorize it as Category 4 flatly unexplained.
Wow, so the phenomenon is the same, but the analyst's available knowledge completely changes its categorization.
That's the dynamic. Lake's method respects the pilot's observation, while understanding that the subsequent analysis is relative to the analyst's knowledge base, not just the pilot's.
Let's ground this back in the messy reality of the defense environment with Section 4, the terrestrial imperative. Lake makes a powerful case for why we have to exhaust every human explanation first, starting with the sheer operational complexity of modern airspace.
Yes, we have to remind ourselves of the overwhelming complexity of the U.S. defense environment. Lake describes it as having saturated radar coverage, with civilian, military, black budget, and contractor platforms, test ranges, spoofing, electronic warfare, or EW decoys, all layered on top of each other like a bad lasagna.
A bad lasagna, I like that. That image alone speaks volumes. So if the skies are this saturated and complicated, and we know that vast amounts of military activity are by definition secret, what does that imply about the odds of something truly non-terrestrial successfully joyriding through that mess without being immediately detected or engaged?
The odds, statistically speaking, are thin. Lake doesn't say zero, but he demands that we exhaust every human explanation first, including the ones the public isn't allowed to know exist. The context of the witness's observation is critical. A highly trained pilot can see something real and extraordinary and still be wrong about what category it belongs to.
And that's not a critique of the pilot.
No, it's a critique of the pilot's available technical vocabulary.
This brings us to the core logical mistake Lake identifies, which he calls the leap of faith error. This is the intellectual shortcut that derails the entire scientific process.
The mistake is jumping immediately from, I don't know what that was, to, therefore it wasn't human. Lake points out that this leap skips about 12 layers of critical analysis. Classified engineering, advanced countermeasures, limitations of human and sensor perception, simple misinterpretation due to poor reference frames.
You're confusing engineering secrecy with physical impossibility.
Exactly. If you skip those steps, that's the error you make.
Okay, let's apply Lake's analysis to the 3 possibilities that must be explored when someone reports a silent circular craft with extreme acceleration. Starting with possibility 1, technologically human, engineering secrecy. This is basically the category 2 explanation.
Right. If this is true, the craft adheres to known or near-known physics. The key here, which Lake really stresses, is that while governments can hide implementations, they can't hide entire branches of fundamental science forever.
What do you mean?
Well, governments can't hide entire branches of metallurgy or energy generation or propulsion that violate the laws of physics for decades without leaks and independent discovery. It's just not possible. So if it's human, it's using advanced applications of established principles.
So what are the specific, non-forbidden, yet highly secret engineering examples Lake suggests could account for those impossible performance constraints we listed earlier?
He provides several examples that are difficult, expensive, and potentially dangerous to operate,
Oh, yeah.
but are not forbidden by physics. And it's worth getting into the detail here for the listener.
Please do, because these are the concepts that often get tossed around as just jargon.
Okay, first, electric propulsion. This naturally operates with no combustion noise, so it solves the silent constraint immediately. Second, distributed thrust or boundary layer control.
Boundary layer control.
This is crucial for maneuverability. Think of a conventional airplane hitting air resistance, creating drag. Boundary layer control uses subtle, high-speed manipulation of the air right next to the craft's skin, sometimes using slots or microjets, to keep the airflow smooth and attached.
So it makes the craft hydrodynamically slippery.
Essentially, yeah. It allows for radical, smooth maneuvering far beyond what traditional control surfaces can achieve. The craft isn't wrestling with the air, it's wearing a suit of air, gliding effortlessly.
Okay, what's next?
Third, plasma-based flow control. This is even more exotic. By ionizing the air around the craft, you can temporarily create localized fields of energized gas. This can dramatically reduce drag, potentially eliminate the shock wave that causes a sonic boom, and allow for extreme changes in velocity without physical control surfaces.
So it's like it's moving through a less dense medium?
Almost, yes. That addresses the silent, no heat flume, and no sonic boom constraints simultaneously, provided the object isn't going too fast.
And the G-force problem.
Right. Fourth, and this is vital, inertial dampening via structure. Now, this isn't science fiction inertial dampeners,
Great.
but clever engineering. The craft itself is designed using advanced materials and geometry to handle immense G-forces and protect the internal components. Even if a human pilot can't handle 50 Gs, if the craft can, then the craft has preserved the physical constraint of acceleration.
The implication here is clear. If the mystery is solved by one of these concepts, which are all within the bounds of known or extrapolated physics, the mystery is engineering secrecy, not science.
It's a Category 2 scenario. It requires high-level security clearance to solve, not a revolution in physics.
Boring but scientifically sound.
Exactly. Now, possibility 2 tackles the limits of the observer, incomplete or misinterpreted observations, human perception. This is where Lake returns to the fact that we humans are just flawed instruments.
And Lake is careful to state this is not calling people stupid.
Not at all.
It's recognizing the limits of the biological equipment that's doing the observing, especially when confronted with the unknown.
That's vital. Human perception is incredibly fraught with errors when you're trying to judge objects in the sky, particularly at night or at high altitude or without a known size reference. Distance and scale are often wrong. Acceleration is often inferred, not measured by instruments. Silence is relative.
Right.
And motion can appear graceful precisely because the reference points are poor.
So let's expand on his dot in the sky metaphor. How exactly does the brain fill in those gaps, often badly, and create this illusion of extreme performance?
The brain is a pattern-filling machine. It's built to find meaning in ambiguity. So when you see a small, angular object moving smoothly across a featureless sky, especially against a clear blue or a featureless night sky, without context, without reference points.
No wings, no sound, no weight.
Right. Your brain struggles to assign a known category or scale. There's no horizon, no cloud for reference, nothing to anchor the observation to. So if that small object moves rapidly from point A to point B, your brain, lacking accurate distance data, often assumes the object is relatively close and therefore must be moving incredibly fast.
So it misinterprets the data.
It does. If the motion is smooth due to computer-controlled thrust vectoring, the brain interprets that smooth, non-aerodynamic transition as immense power and speed. It looks like it's shot off like a dragster, even if the actual speed is modest and the object is miles away.
So if this option is true, the mystery is human perception, not craft performance.
Exactly. The constraint preservation still holds. The witness did perceive instantaneous acceleration, but the physical reality of the craft's speed gets downgraded.
Finally, we hit possibility 3. Incomplete physics. The uncomfortable one. This is the only path that leads to Category 4.
And the threshold for this possibility is astronomically high. Lake emphasizes that if we are going to admit physics is missing a pillar, if we need to invent a new law of nature to explain this, the criteria have to be truly revolutionary and reproducible.
Meaning,
we are talking about an object that accelerates at thousands of G-forces without reaction mass, without heat, without shock waves or sonic booms, and crucially, without structural failure.
To understand the sheer physical violence that implies, if a human-sized craft accelerated at thousands of Gs, even for a split second, the material should instantly deform, heat up from friction, and be destroyed. The energy transfer would be violent.
Precisely. If the constraints require an external force that nullifies inertia or somehow shields the object from the atmosphere, that is the definition of Category 4. But, and this is a big but, Lake points out that if this level of physical anomaly were happening routinely in Earth's atmosphere, the evidence would not be anecdotal. It would be ripping holes in instruments.
We would have hard data.
We would see reproducible, quantifiable measurements that definitively show violations of momentum conservation, not just, anecdotal reports from pilots who were startled. The bar for admitting physics is incomplete is necessarily and rightly very high.
This brings us to the most conservative and I would say the most compelling explanation Lake offers, the concept he calls the drone gap. This is where he uses his constrained analysis to reverse engineer what the actual likely terrestrial vehicle is that's generating most of these hard sightings.
The drone gap concept is Lake's argument that military and private technology has simply advanced faster than the public's mental model of what a flying machine looks like. The public is still expecting propellers or jet engines, while engineering has moved far beyond that conceptual threshold.
The mystery lies in the lag between imagination and reality.
It does. It's a historical pattern, isn't it?
Yeah.
Technology advances, and people classify the new, unseen tech as otherworldly.
Right.
Think about the historical analogies Lake provides. In 1950, if a layman saw a plane, without a visible propeller, they might genuinely say, it doesn't have an engine, it's a UFO. Decades later, in the 1980s, the report changed too. It's a black triangle with no wings or tail surfaces moving silently.
Which was the F-117 Nighthawk.
A black-budget classified stealth aircraft, which shattered the public's definition of a flyable object.
So what is the conceptual threshold we have crossed today in 2025?
The new threshold is, it's a silent, glowing sphere that zips sideways with impossible precision. Lake suggests the sober answer is the evolution of the Black Ops drone. A non-traditional aerial platform, maybe the size of a small car or a motorcycle, optimized for low observability and extreme control.
The core of the drone cap is that these new machines have crossed a conceptual line. They stopped looking like small airplanes and started looking like machines that don't care if you understand them.
That's exactly right. The public is arguing about wings versus jets, but actual engineering has moved to enclosed lift, distributed thrust, and autonomous control platforms where traditional aerodynamic surfaces are minimized or just eliminated.
And secrecy doesn't need to be perfect.
No, it only needs to stay ahead of imagination, which Lake argues it consistently does, often by decades.
Okay, now, let's get into the incredible detail Lake provides on the vehicle people keep calling a UFO. This is where he uses the preserved constraints. Silent, zips sideways, sphere to reverse engineer the likely terrestrial mechanism that fulfills all those requirements within Category 2.
He describes it as a medium to large unmanned aerial vehicle, a UAV, using a shrouded lift system. Critically, it's not a quadcopter or a jet engine. It's a highly advanced ducted fan or lift fan platform optimized for stealth and precise control, not outright supersonic speed.
And the size. Why does he specify the size of a motorcycle to a small car?
That size range is exactly where human depth perception falls apart when viewing an object at altitude without reference points. If it's smaller, it's often dismissed as a bird or a hobby drone. If it's larger, say the size of a jumbo jet, the scale's too obvious.
But at that motorcycle to small car scale.
At that scale, without visible wings or noise, our brains cannot reliably estimate its distance or size, leading to wild miscalculations of its performance, especially its speed.
Let's explore the lift and propulsion details that explain the smooth, silent operation. This is where we need to tackle the jargon.
The key is the enclosed fan system inside a circular or polygonal shroud. Think of it less like a helicopter propeller and more like a high-tech turbine fan, but one that's optimized for slow, efficient, quiet lift. These use large diameter, low RPM blades for efficiency and noise reduction, unlike high-screaming jets or buzzing hobby drone propellers.
What are stators and why are they important to the visual appearance from the ground?
Stators are internal, fixed vanes or plates designed to straighten the airflow after it exits the rotor blades, which maximizes efficiency. When you're looking up from below, especially through heat haze or in low light, these internal stators often look like mysterious internal structure or perhaps even non-physical energy effects to the uninitiated observer.
So it looks fixed and solid, not like moving parts.
Exactly, and the critical feature that explains the seemingly impossible instant lateral maneuvering.
That's the one.
That's thrust vectoring. It's achieved via internal vanes, movable surfaces, or variable geometry at the exhaust point of the shroud. Instead of tilting the entire craft like a plane to turn or banking like a helicopter, the craft keeps its orientation level and simply vectors the thrust sideways, backward, or instantly downward,
Which allows for sudden lateral movement, smooth acceleration, and precise hovering.
without the craft needing to visibly tilt. It uses known physics to achieve movements that feel impossible to the uninitiated observer, leading to the zigzagging or shot off like a bullet descriptions.
The noise profile is often cited as the most mysterious part. They are silent. How does Lake use physics to explain this constraint?
Because there's no jet exhaust and no high-speed prop shop, the primary noise signature is a low-frequency hum generated by the large, slow-moving lift fans. Crucially, Lake explains that low-frequency sound dissipates extremely fast with altitude. He estimates that from the ground, especially above 1,500–2,000 feet, the craft acoustically reads as silent. It's not physically silent, it's just outside the effective hearing range of the ground observer. The silence is a feature of distance and atmospheric physics, not some anti-gravity device.
And the extreme speed illusion, the shot off like a bullet description that convinces witnesses they're seeing impossible acceleration.
That is the classic failure of human perception we discussed, just amplified by the drone's design. Small angular size combined with smooth, rapid motion and the total lack of reference points. No smoke trail, no visible exhaust, no wings. It makes the actual modest speed appear extreme.
The brain just supplies the narrative of dragster acceleration.
Because it has no known category for the object's performance,
Yeah.
and it cannot reliably measure the distance or velocity. It's the brain's best guess when confronted with ambiguous input.
What about the visual artifacts, the shimmering or the apparent energy effects or glowing that witnesses often report, especially on video?
That's likely caused by several things. One, airflow distortion around the shroud and body, especially if plasma flow control is being used. That energized air will visually distort light. Two, what appears to be a solid, seamless surface could be the composite materials of the body blurring as the craft moves, or the rapidly rotating internal components being seen through the shroud opening.
And the material itself.
The stealthy material composites and radar-absorbent coatings lacks the rivets and seams of conventional aircraft, so it reflects ambient light in confusing, non-traditional ways that camera sensors often exacerbate. It only looks non-aerodynamic if your baseline is a 1940s airplane design.
This level of detail using the constraint-preserving analysis to reverse engineer a mundane yet classified solution is just fascinating. It takes the mystery out of the spectacle and puts it back into the engineering.
It does. And the true shock, as Lake puts it, is encapsulated in his final summary here. He states, aliens are the lazy explanation, Black Ops drones are the boring one.
I love that quote. It forces us to confront the fact that reality, while often complex, is rarely cinematic. The sober translation of silent glowing sphere that zips sideways is just.
It's just a platform with lift fans, inertial stabilization, composite skin, and a flight profile my brain has no category for.
Lake's goal isn't to dismiss the phenomenon, it's to downgrade the mysticism and upgrade the model.
Exactly. He wants us to move past the immediate jump to the most sensational conclusion and realize that the most conservative explanation, the existence of highly advanced, classified terrestrial drones, accounts for the vast majority of the truly hard constraints reported by credible witnesses.
Let's synthesize this and bring this rigorous analysis home for the listener. Lake has given us a powerful framework to filter what we see and what we read.
Lake's powerful lesson is this. You don't debunk by calling people stupid. You debunk by explaining everything you can without cheating. You respect the data, you respect the witness, and you respect the physical constraints imposed by the observation.
And whatever remains.
Whatever remains after we process that clean remainder set is the true anomaly worthy of scientific investigation. If it falls into Category 2, it's a failure of security transparency. If it falls into Category 4, it's a failure of physics.
So what does this all mean? It means reality is often boring, constantly upgrading its technology while letting people argue about what they think they saw. Secrecy, according to Lake, only needs to stay ahead of imagination, which it consistently does.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge for us as observers is to keep our technical vocabulary upgraded, realizing that the truth isn't always explosive. Sometimes it's just incredibly expensive, boring engineering.
And that framework is critical for you, the listener, navigating the current explosion of information. If an observation adheres to known physics but requires classified engineering to explain the execution, it's a security problem, Category 2. If it genuinely violates known physics entirely, it's a science problem, Category 4, and it requires physical evidence that goes far beyond even the most credible anecdotal accounts.
We need that sensor data.
We need producible sensor data proving momentum was violated.
We end with Lake's observation on the explosion of the UFO narrative in recent years. He notes that as technology advances and sensors improve, true unknowns should become rarer, not more common, because our capacity to measure and categorize phenomena should increase.
But the narrative is exploding anyway.
Which raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider beyond the technical analysis.
Right.
If the true unknowns become rarer as technology improves, but the narrative explodes anyway, Lake suggests that tells us something important about the forces at play. Does the current UFO conversation surge due to cultural contagion, narrative inflation from social media and media frenzy? Or is it institutional opacity governments purposely letting the alien narrative distract from black budget tech? Or is it simple mislabeling the failure of analysts to correctly apply the categorization?
It's a critical question.
Which of those poisons, narrative, inflation, secrecy, or miscategorization, is the most prevalent force driving the UFO conversation today? Apply Lake's constraint-preserving analysis not just to the data of the sighting, but to the source of the story itself. That is the ultimate discipline.